So only 3 games to talk about in terms of the midweek action for week number 29, and because of that, I'm not really going to do a timestamp in terms of the preview for the midweek games, or do a timestamp when I do the review of these 3 games. But yeah, like I said many times before, we are getting to the point of the season where pretty much every game is a playoff implication game. And then unless you have 2 teams that is already eliminated from the playoffs or about to be eliminated from the playoffs, every games matter for one or even both of these teams. And for the first game between FC Cincinnati versus Atlanta, this game obviously mattered for Atlanta more than FC Cincinnati because Atlanta, of course, are coming off of a surprising 3-1 defeat against the Columbus Crew, while FC Cincinnati surprisingly won 1-0 on the road against Montreal. And despite the fact that they got absolutely dominated for the majority of the game, and that they were able to just park the bus for 97 minutes and still able to hold on to that 1-0 lead that they got just the first minute of the game. Now, talk about playoff implication for both of these teams. Obviously, for FC Cincinnati, playoffs is not a thing in their dictionary because they are eliminated from that. While for Atlanta, they have already clinched their playoff after what happened this weekend, and that, while they, of course, lose to Columbus this weekend, the good news is because other results kind of gone in favor of them, that's why they officially have clinched their playoff spot. But they're obviously their main goal right now is not just about getting into the playoffs, but they want to get into a very good position in the playoffs. And one good position that they want to get in when the playoffs start is the first place position and get a first round bye. Because I know I haven't really mentioned this throughout this season, but first place is very important this season. Like, unlike in previous year where I think the first 2 place is very important because that's where it represents the first round bye. But because the playoffs is a little bit different this season, that is why first place is very important, because that is now the only spot that guarantees you a first round bye. And right now, NYCFC, of course, owns that spot, and that Atlanta is 9 points behind them. But they do have a game in hand, which this is the game in hand that they have over NYCFC for that top spot, and they of course will face off each other in the latter part of the season in Yankee Stadium. So, all hopes is still not lost in terms of them getting that first spot, but they need to first take care of business against FC Cincinnati, which, I've been saying, this is the free game of the week for many teams when they face FC Cincinnati, except if you are Montreal, who decided that they're not going to take FC Cincinnati as kind of like the free game of the week, or more like they're acting like that is LAFC every single week. So for Atlanta, they need to, of course, take advantage of it and hopefully get some points, which, by the way, if you cannot believe this, but they actually dropped points against FC Cincinnati early in the season. But this was all the way back in the early part of the season when Atlanta was struggling, and FC Cincinnati obviously were riding on a bit of a high before they just completely fall off the map for the remaining of the season. But moving on into the next match is Portland versus the Red Bulls. So the Timbers have a record of 13-4-12, and the Red Bulls have a record of 12-5-13. Portland, of course, lost 1-0 to DC at home, while the Red Bulls have won 1 out of their last 6 games. And it's safe to say that, for both of these teams, they're coming off in this game on a loss and not really on a high note. But in terms of the playoff implication, well, for Portland, they, of course, are tied with Dallas for that last spot in the playoff picture in the Western Conference. But they do have a game in hand over FC Dallas, and that, this game will not be the game in hand that they have with FC Dallas, because Dallas also play in the middle of the week. But I think down the line they're going to have that game in hand, and that Dallas, of course, will not play in one of the the midweek games that is going to happen. So, in some way they're going to get that game in hand soon. But, they are tied in terms of being at the last spot of the playoffs, and that they got to be careful here with them. They can't just think that, we got a game in hand over Dallas, and that if we don't really need to win this game because if we of course get that game in hand, and then if Dallas they drew or win that game, we still can be able to find a way to get them and get above the playoff line. And I believe Portland currently has the tiebreaker over Dallas right now because they of course have more wins than what Dallas had so far this season. So yeah, they they of course are in a good position in terms of above the red line, and that Dallas, as I mentioned, next they have a lot of work to do in terms of trying to get back into the playoff race, and that in their game against Seattle, it's a must-win game for them. Portland can't just take their guard off and just say that this should be. We don't really need to win this. And, they're playing against a Red Bulls team are 4 points above the red line with a game in hand over the team that is below the red line also. And one thing that I also want to mention is that I'm pretty sure a lot of Western Conference team is going to watch this match as well as this match between Seattle and Dallas. And I'm pretty sure a lot of, if not every single Western Conference team between 2nd through 8th are rooting for the Red Bulls to get a win over Portland, because they don't want to see Portland as a big threat in terms of, if they do win this game, they can of course climb as high as 4th place depending on what the other resort comes. So yeah, this is definitely going to be a very interesting game. For the Timbers, the question for them in this game is that, one, can they of course get some of their attacking player back in this game? So guys like Brian Fernandez and Sebastian Blanco, guys that did not play in that game against DC United, can they of course come back in this game? Because it felt like they really missed them in that Sunday matchup when they played DC and lost them 1-0. Or, can the Red Bulls, who, I don't know if Chris Armas is going to try to follow the same formula that DC did, which is just bunker and try to, let Portland go at them and see if Portland can, of course, break them down. And as much as I know the Timbers throughout this season, I've been seeing them repeatedly answer this question, the fact that can, of course, they break down a defense that just kind of bunkers against them, and the answer to that question is no. They haven't been very successful in terms of that. But when you look at this Red Bulls defense that has just been so poor in these last couple of weeks, and I've been saying, when you are, in order to bunker against a good team and be very successful, you need to be able to have a very organized defense and make sure that defense does not have any gaps in between that bunker. And this Red Bulls team, knowing what I'm seeing from the last couple of games, I can definitely bet that if they of course try to bunker against Portland, they are going to leave gaps in the back, and that's where the Timbers are going to really exploit those spaces. Now, moving on into the final game of this week is Seattle versus Dallas. So Seattle, of course, won 3 out of the last 4 games, and all of a sudden the Sounders started to look very hot heading into the playoffs. Well, Dallas, their current record is 12-7-11, and like I said, Dallas is kind of in a little bit of a trouble because they're below the red line, and while they're tied with Portland right now in terms of the standings, Portland does have a game in hand over them. And Seattle, of course, 6 points above the red line right now and currently in 2nd of the Western Conference. But if they can win this game, they could definitely extend that advantage of being 2nd in the Western Conference and try to maybe kind of run away in terms of that spot so that they can, of course, guarantee themselves to host a playoff game in the first round and be the highest seed hosting a playoff game heading into the knockout round. But as for Dallas, like I said, I think in many ways this is a big game for them. And I just wonder, how are they going to recover after just getting absolutely blown to pieces by Chicago on the road on Saturday? Like, that was an absolute embarrassing display by Dallas. And one thing that will definitely not help Dallas, besides the fact that they, of course, are going to be coming into this game definitely not with a lot of confidence after getting blown out by the Fire, is that they are not very good on the road. Like, this season, it's been one of the problem with Dallas where, at home, they definitely are very decent, But whenever they go on the road, they always tends to struggle, and they always tends to not get the points that they needed. And I guess this is what happened when you have a young team that, when you have a young team like this, one of the biggest thing that you're gonna have to worry about this young team is that, whenever they go on the road, they face some adversity, and sometimes these young player doesn't take these adversity very well. And the other issue with these young players is that down the stretch they started to get tired out, and that down the stretch you are seeing why this team is started. It's no wonder why Dallas for the last couple of seasons has been kind of gone on a collapse near the end of the season, because most of these young guys pretty much are all tired out and all spent throughout this long MLS season. And for Dallas' sake, certainly, hopefully that is not going to be the case again. But this game against Seattle is going to really maybe be a season-defining game for them. I mean, if they lose this game, they are definitely in a very big hole in terms of trying to get back above the red line. Like, if Portland wins this one and Dallas, of course, find themselves losing this one, all of a sudden Dallas is 3 points back of Portland, and Portland has a game in hand of them. And if Portland wins that game in hand of them, they will be 6 points up on Dallas. And then you have to maybe look at another team that Dallas might be chasing, which is the Quakes, who that is a team that Dallas could potentially catch, because they of course are 1 point up. But I just think when you look at Dallas remaining of schedule and the fact that they have a history of collapsing late in the season, I definitely don't have a lot of concern about this team. And that this is why I said that if they can come into CenturyLink Field, and that if they can prove that they can, of course, get resort even down the stretch, and that they, of course, lose that mentality of always collapsing late in the season, then maybe I can definitely believe that Dallas could be in. There could be some hope in terms of Dallas be making the playoffs, and one of the teams that is currently above them will most likely be dropped out of the playoff spot. But either way, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button. This was relatively a short video because there was only 3 games that I have to talk about. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.